Friends, if you're excited to watch the gripping and emotionally powerful 2025 film A Widow's Game in English, then go ahead and like this video right now. It really supports the channel and helps us bring you more content like this. And if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, then I'd like to give you a big welcome. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any updates on the latest movies, detailed reviews, behind-the-scenes stories, and everything happening in the world of entertainment. In today's video, we're going to talk in detail about A Widow's Game, a film that has caught the attention of audiences everywhere with its intense storyline, emotional depth, and strong performances. This is not just a regular thriller. It's a layered story full of mystery, emotion, and twists that will keep you guessing until the very end. Whether you're already curious about the film or hearing about it for the first time, stay tuned, because I'll be giving you everything you need to know in one complete video. First, we'll start with what the film is all about. What kind of story does A Widow's Game tell? What themes does it explore? Who are the characters? And why has the film been getting so much attention since its announcement? After that, we'll talk about where you can watch it. Yes, friends, I will be telling you on which OTT platform or satellite TV channel the film will be available, whether it's already streaming or is coming soon, and how you can access it. This way, you won't miss your chance to watch it as soon as possible. We'll then go deeper into the production side of the film. Who directed A Widow's Game? Who wrote the screenplay? How was the pre-production handled? Where was the movie filmed? What kind of locations were chosen to match the tone of the story? Was it shot on real locations or studio sets? How long did the filming take, and what challenges were faced during the shoot? I'll share all those details with you. We'll also explore the post-production process, how the film was edited, what kind of special effects or sound design techniques were used, and how the background music enhances the mood of the scenes. Speaking of music, we'll take a moment to talk about the soundtrack of the movie as well. Was the music composed specifically for this film? How does it blend with the story? Was it haunting, emotional, subtle, or intense? Then comes the budget and box office segment. How much did A Widow's Game cost to make? Was it a big budget project or a more modest production with a powerful script? And what kind of collection did it make at the box office? Was it a commercial success, a surprise hit, or still finding its audience? I'll break down everything for you in a simple and easy-to-understand way. Of course, one of the most important parts of the video is the story itself. I'll give you a short, spoiler-free review of the plot, just enough to give you an idea of what to expect, without ruining any twists or surprises. I'll talk about the pacing of the film, its emotional impact, and what kind of audience this movie will appeal to. Is it slow and atmospheric? Is it fast-paced and filled with action? Or does it strike a balance? You'll find out here. We'll also go over the star cast in detail. Who are the lead actors? What kind of roles do they play? How do their characters evolve throughout the story? I'll talk about how well each actor performed, which performances stood out, and how the chemistry between characters added to the film's strength. Whether it's a well-known actor or a rising star, you'll get to know who did what, and how. And yes, we'll also go through some fun and interesting facts about the movie. For example, was this story based on a book or a true incident? Were there any unexpected moments during the filming? Were any scenes improvised by the actors? All these behind-the-scenes stories make the movie even more fascinating. So friends, today's video is your complete one-stop guide to A Widow's Game. From where to watch to what to expect, to who did what, everything is included. Whether you're just curious about the movie or already a fan, make sure to watch this video till the end. I promise, you'll walk away with a full understanding of why A Widow's Game is one of the most talked about films of the year. So sit back, relax, and let's begin today's video. Alright, grab your popcorn and lean in close, because A Widow's Game isn't just a movie. It's a full-blown psychological chess match dressed up as a mystery thriller. This story doesn't walk in a straight line. No way. It takes the scenic route through shadows, secrets, and twists that come out of nowhere. From the first frame, the film whispers, "Nothing is as it seems," and oh boy, does it deliver on that promise. We begin not with the widow's grief or a tragic funeral scene, but with a crime scene, cold, clinical, and suspicious. A wealthy, high-profile businessman is found dead under eerie and unexplained circumstances in his remote countryside estate. At first glance? Suicide. But one look at the eerie setup and you know something's off. Enter Eleanor, the widow in question. She's the image of calm poise, dressed in black, face blank, voice measured, too measured. There's no sobbing, no denial, no collapse into despair. She's processing, yes, but you quickly get the sense that she knows something we don't. Something big. Now, this is where the film starts to toy with you. Just when you're about to settle into the usual whodunit rhythm, bam, the timeline fractures. Suddenly we're not in the present anymore. We're in a flashback. Or is it a hallucination? Or maybe an interview scene from the future? You can't tell, and that's exactly how the film wants it. The narrative jumps between timelines like a skipping record, sometimes elegant, sometimes jarring. It's designed to keep you on your toes. You'll be watching one scene and then boom, cut to Eleanor pouring wine at a dinner that may have happened months ago, or not at all. The brilliance of the plot lies in how it reveals just enough to make you think you've figured it out, only to twist that very detail into something entirely different minutes later. Take the first real turning point. A discovery in the dead husband's office. A locked drawer, a letter addressed to someone Eleanor's never heard of, and an old photograph with someone conveniently missing from public family records. Suddenly, the focus shifts. This isn't just about a suspicious death. It's about a hidden past. Layers begin to peel back. Financial scandals, a mysterious disappearance from years ago, even whispers of blackmail. You feel like a detective, piecing it all together, only to realize that the puzzle pieces might not belong to the same puzzle at all. But while the mystery keeps you intrigued, the emotional conflict keeps you hooked. Eleanor isn't just navigating a crime. She's navigating her own haunted psyche. And here's where the film's emotional core kicks in. Throughout the story, Eleanor battles inner demons. Guilt, loss, betrayal, and a creeping sense of identity unraveling. In private moments, like when she stares at her reflection for a little too long or flinches at a song on the radio, you sense something much deeper beneath her surface. The movie constantly makes you ask, is she a victim? A manipulator? Both. Then comes the midpoint. Asterisk the confession star. But this isn't the type of confession you're expecting. No dramatic monologue under pressure. No sudden reveal of, I did it. It's quieter. Slippery. Eleanor gives away just a fragment of truth in a therapy session, enough to shift the audience's entire perception of her, but not enough to confirm anything. You don't know if she's admitting guilt or confessing to having been broken down by years of psychological warfare in her marriage. Or both. Either way, it's the moment where Eleanor steps out of the shadow of the plot and becomes a full-fledged, deeply complex character. And from here, everything gets darker. Now the themes start bleeding through like ink in water. Manipulation, power dynamics, female autonomy, trauma, revenge. Eleanor's every move becomes laced with deeper meaning. Is she taking control of her life? Or destroying everyone around her in a long-con act of vengeance? The film doesn't answer you directly. It makes you sit with your own suspicions. As the narrative spirals forward, and sideways and backwards and upside down, more secrets come to light. Every supporting character becomes a suspect, even the ones who seemed irrelevant. A seemingly minor housekeeper suddenly drops a line that sends chills down your spine. A forgotten voicemail resurfaces. A police officer who once seemed trustworthy starts bending the rules a bit too much. The tension is electric. The final act? Oh, it's a masterclass in slow-burn suspense. There's no massive action scene, no gunfire, no frantic chase through the woods. Instead, it's a confrontation soaked in dread. Two people in a quiet room, one secret away from everything falling apart. And just when you think you're about to get your big reveal, the film gives you a twist that doesn't just change the story. It recontextualizes the entire film. One small detail. One line. That's all it takes to unravel every assumption you had for the last 2 hours. The beauty of A Widow's Game lies in its refusal to be easy. It doesn't spoon-feed you answers. It demands your attention, makes you second-guess yourself, challenges you to see beyond the obvious. It plays with structure the way a magician plays with sleight of hand. You think you're watching one thing, but something entirely different is happening in the background. And when the final credits roll, you'll probably want to watch it all over again, just to catch all the clues you missed the first time. So if you're looking for a film that keeps you constantly guessing, emotionally invested, and mentally tangled, A Widow's Game is not just a movie. It's a narrative puzzle box, one that refuses to open cleanly and rewards you for digging deeper. Alright, if you thought the characters in A Widow's Game were just pieces on a mystery board, think again. This film doesn't deal in simple suspects and victims. It gives you a cast of people who feel real, broken, calculating, desperate, haunted, and, above all, fascinating. Each one is layered like a Russian nesting doll. Every time you think you've figured someone out, they reveal another side. One that changes your entire perception of who they are and what they're after. Let's start with Eleanor. You may walk into this movie expecting to meet a grieving widow curled up in the corner of a room, clutching a framed photo and crying into a monogrammed handkerchief. What you get instead is a woman who doesn't seem to fit the role she's been cast in. She's calm, calculated, emotionally guarded, and that makes you instantly suspicious. But the more time you spend with her, the more you realize that this isn't a woman without emotions. It's a woman who's spent years learning to control them. She's been through something, and not just the death of her husband. Her every glance, pause, and movement feels like it's part of a bigger story. One that you don't know yet. And that's where the beauty of her character arc lies. Eleanor doesn't transform in the traditional sense. She doesn't start broken and end healed. No, her arc is more like a revelation. The film strips away the layers society has placed on her. The expectations of widowhood, of womanhood, of victimhood. What emerges isn't someone new, but someone who's been hiding in plain sight the entire time. And when she finally starts making decisions that look selfish or dangerous or morally gray, you realize, she's not losing control, she's taking it back. Now Matthew, the dead husband, is one of the most fascinating absent characters you'll ever encounter. He's dead before the opening credits finish rolling, but his presence looms over every single scene. At first, we see him through Eleanor's memories, and he seems fine. Affectionate, successful, a little controlling, but maybe that's just stress, right? Then the picture starts to shift. As Eleanor's memories become sharper, we begin to see the cracks. The passive-aggressive comments. The emotional manipulation. The way he twisted her insecurities into dependence. And suddenly, you're not just wondering who killed him. You're wondering how Eleanor survived him. He's not just a character in flashbacks. He's the ghost that won't leave the room, and his true nature is revealed piece by unsettling piece. Then we've got Detective Bram. The audience surrogate, the man asking all the questions you're yelling at the screen. But here's the twist. He's not immune to Eleanor's enigma. At first, he's by the book. Suspicious. Professional. But something about Eleanor starts to get under his skin. He sees the cracks in her mask, and part of him starts to believe her. Or maybe admire her. Or maybe he just doesn't know what to think anymore. And that's where his character becomes really compelling. He's torn between duty and doubt, and the deeper he digs, the more compromised he becomes. His arc is like a slow unraveling. He thinks he's in control of the investigation, but by the end, you're not sure if he's investigating Eleanor, or falling into her trap. Mira, Eleanor's so-called best friend, is a masterclass in passive tension. She starts out soft-spoken, all comforting smiles and casserole dishes. But there's something off. Something too polished. She always shows up at just the right moment. Says just the right thing. Knows a little too much. Her arc is more subtle, more quiet. But by the time the story hits its final act, you'll be asking yourself, was she ever really a friend? Or was she just another player in the long game? The tension between Mira and Eleanor is some of the film's most deliciously uncomfortable material. It's like watching two people playing a game of emotional poker. Both smiling, both bluffing, both holding daggers behind their backs. And then there's Richard, the lawyer/fixer. Slick, articulate, and swimming in moral ambiguity. You get the feeling he's done some very dirty work for very powerful people. He treats Eleanor like a problem to be managed. Not a person, not even a client. Their scenes are icy, full of veiled threats and unspoken accusations. He knows more than he lets on, but so does she. He represents the legal system, the patriarchy, the world that tries to put Eleanor in a box. And every time he tries to close the lid, she pushes back. Harder. Their dynamic is like watching a sword fight with words, and the tension only grows sharper with every encounter. Even the minor characters feel like they've got backstories we don't fully see. A housekeeper who stares a second too long. A therapist who seems overly cautious. A journalist who appears for one scene but leaves behind a chilling question. Everyone has a motive. Everyone has secrets. And every interaction reveals something about Eleanor, or just as likely, raises more questions. The relationships in the film are like a web. At first glance, you see the lines connecting people. Marriage, friendship, law enforcement, business. But then slowly you start to see the snags. The knots. The traps. No one's dynamic is clean. Everyone's relationship with Eleanor is complicated, layered with old betrayals, buried truths, or power plays. And the best part? The film doesn't give you neat resolutions. These characters don't walk off into the sunset with life lessons learned. They walk away with scars, with victories that feel like defeats, or defeats that feel strangely empowering. So, are the characters in A Widow's Game well developed? Oh yes. But more importantly, they live. They breathe. They lie. They love. They manipulate. They surprise you. Their arcs don't follow some script. They follow their own twisted logic. Watching this film isn't about seeing how the story ends. It's about watching people crack open under pressure and reveal what they've been hiding, sometimes even from themselves. It's a game of identity, survival, and psychological warfare. And in this game, no one walks away clean. Oh, you want the deep dive? Good, because the performances in A Widow's Game don't just add to the film, they define it. Every frame is dripping with psychological tension, and that's not just because of the story. It's because these actors show up and own their roles like they've been living in these characters' minds for years. What you get is a cinematic experience where even a look across the room says more than a page of dialogue. The cast isn't here to entertain you, they're here to pull you into their tangled web, make you uncomfortable, make you question everything, and maybe even make you complicit. Let's start, again, with the center of this universe. The actress playing Eleanor. Her performance is nothing short of hypnotic. She doesn't just walk into scenes, she glides into them, like she's moving through water, always calm on the surface but with the weight of something dark pulling underneath. From the first moment you see her, standing at her husband's funeral, perfectly composed, dry-eyed, you realize she's not your standard grieving widow. She doesn't beg for sympathy. She doesn't need your pity. She dares you to wonder what she's hiding. And that dare? That's what keeps you watching. What makes her performance so magnetic is that she gives you just enough to draw you in but never enough to truly understand her. 1 minute, she's cool and calculated. Ice Queen vibes, precision in every word. The next, she slips and shows you a flicker of something raw, rage, grief, guilt, and just as quickly it's gone. Is she playing everyone? Or is she surviving the only way she knows how? Her pain feels real, but so does her sharp edge. It's like she's wearing grief like armor, and the actress never once lets you forget how heavy that armor is. The restraint she shows is unbelievable. She makes stillness terrifying, silence suspenseful. You want to trust her, but you also want to check the locks on your doors. Then there's the actor who plays Matthew, dead, but not forgotten. He barely gets traditional screen time, but he lingers like smoke. His presence is delivered mostly through flashbacks, dreamlike fragments, and whispered memories, but the performance still lands with a punch. He has this slippery charisma, one of those guys who knows how to make people feel special while keeping a firm grip on the narrative. In the early memories, he's warm, smooth, affectionate. But there's always this edge, a slightly too tight smile, a little too much insistence. The actor doesn't overdo it. He lets you feel the discomfort growing beneath the charm. And as Eleanor's version of him becomes more fractured and complex, his performance shifts too, until you're no longer sure whether he was the loving husband she portrays in public, or the controlling force she quietly escaped from. And that's the brilliance of it. He never gets the chance to defend himself, but the way he's remembered, manipulative, charismatic, possibly monstrous, is all in the nuance the actor threads through every flashback. Detective Bram, played with surgical precision, is the moral compass that keeps spinning. At first glance, he's the guy you think you can rely on. Straight-laced, professional, here to uncover the truth. But then he starts unraveling, not with melodrama, but with tiny human cracks. The actor does this brilliant thing where he keeps his posture tight, like he's always holding back. And the more time he spends with Eleanor, the more those nerves begin to fray. He's not just trying to solve a case. He's trying to understand her. Maybe even save her. Or maybe, just maybe, he's falling under her influence. And you see this all play out in his expressions, in the way he hesitates before asking a question, in how his tone softens unexpectedly. Their dynamic is like an emotional tug-of-war, and the actor nails that internal conflict. The tension between his duty and his growing fascination with the mystery that is Eleanor. Now for Mira, Eleanor's friend who's always just a little too perfect. The actress here delivers a performance so subtle, It's practically a magic trick. On the surface, she's all gentle concern and friendly hugs. But every single line she delivers has a second, hidden meaning just beneath the surface. She'll say something comforting, and you'll catch a flicker in her eyes that suggests she's enjoying watching Eleanor squirm. Her tone is syrupy sweet, but the subtext is often acidic. She plays Mira as someone who's not quite lying, but definitely withholding. You get the sense that she's been waiting for Eleanor to fail, and now that it might be happening, she can't quite hide the satisfaction. It's a performance that weaponizes politeness, and it works beautifully. And let's not forget Richard, the estate lawyer/strategist, who turns legalese into psychological warfare. This actor delivers every word with polished menace. He's not yelling or threatening anyone. He's too smart for that. Instead, he lets the threat hang in the air, delicately implied, impossible to pin down. His conversations with Eleanor feel like chess matches. He never loses his cool. He never raises his voice. But you can see him calculating in real time, looking for her weak spot. His control is chilling, and the actor never once drops the mask, which makes him all the more dangerous. And then you've got the atmosphere built by the supporting cast. The neighbor who seems a little too interested in what goes on in Eleanor's house. The therapist who's clearly in over her head but trying to project calm. Even the background extras, the people in the courtroom, the funeral, the restaurant, they all carry this undercurrent of suspicion and unease. These characters may not have monologues, but the actors show up and add to the paranoia, the suffocating sense that everyone is watching, everyone is judging, and no one is really telling the truth. What makes this ensemble so brilliant is that they're all playing characters who are also performing. People trying to protect themselves, manipulate others, or hide something ugly beneath the surface. So the actors aren't just acting. They're acting as people who are acting. And they pull it off without blinking. Every interaction is loaded. Every conversation feels like a test. Every moment feels like it could tilt the entire narrative in a new direction. You don't just watch a widow's game. You study it. You analyze every pause, every sigh, every sideways glance. Because these performances don't spell things out for you. They whisper. They suggest. They dare you to figure them out. And when it all finally begins to snap into place, you'll realize just how much the actors were showing you all along, without ever needing to say a word. Alright, let's peel back the layers even more, because the direction in A Widow's Game isn't just a background job. It's the beating heart of the whole experience. From the moment the opening credits roll, you can feel the director's fingerprints all over every scene, every frame, every beat of the film. This is a movie shaped with such intention and precision that it almost feels like stepping inside a carefully constructed puzzle box, where each piece is designed to mess with your head, and the director is the one turning the knobs. One of the first things you notice is how the director takes what could have been a straightforward thriller and transforms it into something far more atmospheric, almost hypnotic. Instead of rushing into plot points or relying on dramatic reveals, the film unfolds with this slow, deliberate pace, like a predator stalking its prey. The camera doesn't just record action. It caresses the scenes. It lingers on textures, the cracked paint on a windowsill, the flicker of a candle, the almost imperceptible twitch in a character's eye. It's these moments where the director shows off their true skill, proving that tension isn't just about what happens, but how you see it. Lighting plays a crucial role here, and the director uses it like a painter uses shadows and highlights. There's an almost chiaroscuro quality to the film, the interplay between light and dark, that amplifies the mood. Rooms are rarely fully lit, often cloaked in darkness or soft, diffused light that barely reveals details. Faces appear half in shadow, hiding emotions and secrets. This approach does more than just look good. It visually reinforces the theme of duality, what's shown to the world versus what's kept hidden. The director's choices make the set feel like a living thing, full of secrets lurking just out of sight, and as a viewer, you can't help but lean in, trying to catch every flicker and whisper. Then there's the choreography of movement, both of the camera and the characters. The director favors slow tracking shots that follow Eleanor through her home, creating a sense of surveillance or entrapment. It's like we're being pulled along on her invisible leash, forced to see the world through her eyes, yet from a slight distance, like outsiders spying on a private moment. Sometimes the camera is static, holding a long, unblinking gaze on a character as if daring them to slip up, to reveal more than they intended. This careful control over movement makes even mundane moments feel charged with significance. What's truly remarkable is the director's skill at manipulating time and space. The film's narrative isn't linear. It jumps back and forth through memories, dreams, and reality with a fluidity that could easily become confusing. But the director uses visual cues, changes in color grading, shifts in camera style, even subtle sound changes, to anchor the viewer. Flashbacks aren't just convenient exposition. They're emotional landmines that explode unexpectedly. The way the director blurs the line between past and present deepens the feeling that the story isn't just being told. It's being experienced in real time, with all the uncertainty and instability of memory and trauma. This non-traditional storytelling demands your full attention, and the director's vision pulls you in rather than pushes you away. Pacing deserves a special mention because it's one of those things that can make or break a psychological thriller. The director doesn't fall into the trap of making the film feel sluggish just because it's slow. Instead, the pacing is meticulously calibrated. Early scenes feel calm, almost mundane, lulling you into a false sense of security. Then, layer by layer, the tension tightens, like the slow winding of a clockwork mechanism. The director knows exactly when to let a scene breathe, when to cut quickly to a new angle, and when to hold on a look or a gesture that speaks volumes. This rhythm keeps the audience on edge, teetering between anticipation and dread, and it's a masterclass in how to build suspense without relying on cheap thrills. Sound design in A Widow's Game is another subtle yet powerful tool in the director's arsenal. Instead of a bombastic score, the film relies heavily on ambient sounds. Soft creaks, distant sirens, muffled conversations, the rustling of leaves in the wind. The director understands that silence and near silence can be just as loud as music when used right. Moments where all you hear is the echo of a footstep or the ticking of a clock become incredibly tense, because the director knows the audience's imagination will fill the gaps with its own fears. When music does appear, it's restrained, haunting, almost like a whispered secret rather than a full-throated song. This minimalist approach to sound elevates every scene and immerses the viewer in the film's claustrophobic, unsettling world. The director's vision also shines through in the way they handle the film's tone. A Widow's Game walks a fine line between elegance and menace, and the director balances these elements perfectly. There's a refined, almost stylish quality to the visuals and performances, but it's always undercut by an undercurrent of threat. The film never feels cheesy or over the top. Instead, it's sleek, polished, and deeply unsettling. This tonal control is no accident. The director makes sure that every element, from the color palette to the actors' performances to the editing choices, works in harmony to create an experience that's both beautiful and haunting. Editing is another area where the director's hand is clear. Scenes often end on ambiguous notes. No neat resolution, no clear answers. Cuts are sometimes abrupt, mirroring the fractured psyche of the main character and adding to the film's sense of unease. The director isn't afraid to let the audience sit with discomfort, to hold a moment a beat too long, or to cut away just before you get the full story. This technique keeps you guessing and forces you to engage actively with the narrative rather than passively consuming it. One of the most compelling aspects of the direction is how it invites you to become a detective yourself. The director sprinkles visual and narrative clues throughout the film, but never hands you the key outright. Instead, you're encouraged to piece together the puzzle alongside the characters, navigating through unreliable memories, half-truths, and misdirection. It's an invitation to be part of the mystery, to question every motive and every glance. This immersive storytelling style transforms the film from just something you watch into something you participate in. Finally, the director's courage to avoid the obvious and the expected is what truly sets this film apart. There are no easy villains or heroes here. No clear good guys or bad guys. The direction embraces ambiguity and complexity, refusing to spoon-feed the audience. Instead, it revels in moral gray areas and emotional contradictions, making the film linger in your mind long after the credits roll. In short, the director of A Widow's Game crafts a cinematic world that is as intoxicating as it is disorienting. Their meticulous attention to tone, pacing, visual style, and sound design transforms a simple story into a rich, layered experience. It's like stepping into a beautifully dangerous labyrinth where every choice you make brings you closer to, or further from, the truth. And you wouldn't want it any other way. Let's dive even deeper into the mesmerizing cinematography of A Widow's Game, because this is a film where every frame is packed with layers of meaning, emotion, and visual storytelling that go far beyond just capturing the action. The camera doesn't simply observe the story, it breathes it, giving the film a distinct visual rhythm that guides your emotional journey, from subtle unease to full-blown suspense. One of the first things that hit you about the cinematography is how masterfully it balances intimacy with isolation. The film constantly shifts between tight, suffocating close-ups and wide, sprawling shots that emphasize how small and vulnerable the characters really are in their environments. When Eleanor is caught in a tight close-up, every tiny twitch in her eye or subtle tension in her jaw becomes magnified. The camera forces you to stare into the depths of her mind, exposing raw, flickering emotions like fear, suspicion, or determination. It's a very personal, almost intrusive gaze that pulls you inside her headspace and doesn't let go. But then suddenly, you're pulled back by a wide shot that shows Eleanor dwarfed by towering walls, empty rooms, or shadow-filled corridors. These expansive frames do more than just establish the setting. They visually underscore her loneliness and isolation. It's as if the space around her is swallowing her whole, turning what should be a safe home into a cold, unwelcoming maze. The cinematographer expertly uses this contrast between intimate close-ups and wide shots to keep you off balance, mirroring Eleanor's own emotional turbulence and sense of being trapped. Lighting in this film feels like a living, breathing character itself. The cinematographer doesn't simply light scenes to see the actors. Lighting here sculpts the mood, carving out mystery and tension with every beam and shadow. There's a deliberate, almost obsessive use of chiaroscuro, the interplay of light and darkness, to paint faces and spaces in sharp contrast. This technique not only creates stunning visual compositions but also amplifies the film's themes of duality and deception. Faces are half lit, half hidden, as if the characters themselves are split between truth and lies. Sometimes the light feels warm and inviting, but just as often, it turns cold and clinical, washing the scene in a ghostly pallor that makes you shiver. Color plays a subtle yet powerful role too. The palette is restrained, muted blues, soft grays, deep shadows, but punctuated with bursts of color that carry emotional weight. Those moments of deep red or crimson aren't just about blood or danger. They signal shifts in mood, flashes of anger or passion, or the crackling tension just beneath the surface. Blues and greens often evoke a chill, a sense of detachment, and melancholy, perfectly capturing the emotional coldness that permeates the story. The way these colors are woven into the lighting design is pure visual poetry, making every scene feel carefully composed and emotionally charged. The framing throughout the film is nothing short of ingenious. The cinematographer loves to trap characters within frames inside frames, windows, doorways, mirrors, even the geometric lines of walls and furniture, to visually reinforce themes of confinement, surveillance, and fractured identity. There are countless shots where Eleanor is literally boxed in by her surroundings, surrounded by lines that slice the frame into multiple segments, as if her life and psyche are being pulled apart. This visual fragmentation plays perfectly into the story's psychological tension, making you feel the claustrophobia and suspicion tightening around her like a noose. Speaking of mirrors and reflections, the film uses these elements to stunning effect. Mirrors aren't just props. They're portals to the fractured realities and hidden selves of the characters. You'll often see Eleanor's reflection fractured and multiplied in shards of glass or water, hinting at the multiple layers of truth and deception she's caught up in. These reflective shots are more than just visually striking. They act like visual metaphors for the story's central mysteries and the unstable nature of memory and identity. The cinematography invites you to look twice, to question what you're seeing, and to wonder if what's reflected is really who the characters are or just masks they wear. Camera movement is another subtle but powerful storytelling device here. The film shies away from flashy, attention-grabbing moves and instead favors slow, purposeful tracking shots and steady, lingering takes that heighten tension by making you hyper-aware of every detail. The camera often follows Eleanor as if she's being shadowed, gliding behind her or circling around, creating a voyeuristic feeling that something sinister is always lurking just out of sight. In moments of high tension, the camera might adopt a slightly shaky handheld style, injecting just enough instability to make you feel off-kilter without losing clarity. This controlled use of movement keeps the suspense simmering and the audience hooked. One visually unforgettable sequence is the long hallway shot where Eleanor moves past rows of mirrors, each reflecting a distorted version of herself. The cinematographer's choice to track her movement while capturing these multiple reflections is pure genius. It visually encapsulates the film's central themes of identity, deception, and the elusive nature of truth. It's haunting, beautiful, and just a little unsettling, perfectly embodying the psychological maze Eleanor is navigating. Sound design and cinematography work hand in hand in this film. The cinematographer knows exactly when to pull back, allowing ambient sounds and silence to take center stage, making every shadow and frame breathe with suspense. Light and sound become inseparable partners in creating a world that's as haunting visually as it is orally. The use of negative space is yet another layer of storytelling. Empty corners, vast, unoccupied spaces within a frame, or chairs left vacant in a room all whisper volumes about absence, loss, and emotional distance. The cinematography treats these empty spaces like characters themselves, filling them with meaning and tension. They make you feel the weight of what's missing, whether it's trust, truth, or a person, and heighten the feeling that something is perpetually lurking just beyond the frame. Overall, the cinematography in A Widow's Game doesn't just capture the story. It embodies it, making the film a richly textured visual experience where every angle, every shadow, and every color choice serves to deepen the mystery and emotion. It's a masterclass in how powerful visual storytelling can be when done with intention, precision, and heart. Watching it is like stepping into a dream where nothing is quite what it seems, and every image is charged with meaning. Let's peel back another layer and really sink into the editing and pacing of A Widow's Game, because this film's flow is nothing short of a carefully orchestrated dance. An intricate balancing act between tension and release, speed and stillness, clarity and mystery. The editors here aren't just putting scenes together. They're sculpting time itself, manipulating how we experience every twist, every emotional beat, and every suspenseful moment. Right from the opening scenes, the editing sets a tone that's both deliberate and hypnotic. It doesn't throw you into the action headfirst, but instead eases you in with a steady rhythm that feels like a slow burn, one that teases and tantalizes without ever giving too much away. The cuts are paced just right to let you absorb the atmosphere, the weight of Eleanor's grief, and the unease simmering beneath the surface. There's a patient build-up here, a feeling that the editors know exactly how to stretch moments to heighten anticipation without allowing the film to drag. This patience pays off because by the time the story's bigger twists hit, you're fully invested and every cut lands with emotional and narrative precision. What's fascinating is how the editing handles the film's complex narrative structure. A Widow's Game isn't a straightforward linear tale. It dips into memories, flashes back to pivotal events, and even hints at alternative perspectives. The transitions between these temporal shifts are seamless and sophisticated. Instead of jarring cuts that yank you out of the story, the film uses clever visual and audio cues, like a lingering shot on a certain object, or a sound cue fading in, that act as gentle signposts to guide you through the timeline. It's editing as a subtle narrative map, ensuring you never lose your way even as the story zigzags through time and space. Then there's the way the film plays with rhythm to mirror the characters' emotional states. During intense, fraught scenes, the editing tightens up, with quicker cuts and shorter shot durations that ratchet up the tension almost palpably. It's like the film's heartbeat speeds up, mimicking the characters' racing thoughts and escalating stakes. But in quieter, more introspective moments, the pace slows down, sometimes to the point where shots linger just a little too long, making you feel the weight of silence and the characters' unspoken thoughts. This contrast creates a breathing space in the narrative, allowing you to absorb the psychological complexity and emotional depth without feeling overwhelmed. One particularly masterful sequence showcases this balance perfectly. There's a scene where Eleanor is piecing together clues in a dimly lit room, the editing weaving between close-ups of her face, the objects she examines, and fleeting flashbacks of conversations. The cuts are precise, almost surgical, building a rhythm that feels like a mental puzzle being assembled in real time. The pace here is crucial. It's slow enough to let you follow her thought process, but brisk enough to maintain suspense. This editing style pulls you deep into her perspective, making you feel the urgency and frustration of trying to solve a mystery that's as personal as it is confounding. The film also uses cross-cutting to brilliant effect. There are moments when we switch rapidly between different characters or locations, the cuts slicing back and forth to create tension and dramatic irony. For example, while Eleanor is uncovering a secret in one place, the film cuts to another character's suspicious activity elsewhere, building a web of intrigue that keeps you guessing about how all the pieces will fit together. This technique injects the narrative with a kinetic energy, making the story feel layered and alive. What's more, the editors know exactly when to withhold information and when to reveal it. The pacing is carefully calibrated to drip-feed revelations, teasing the audience with tantalizing glimpses and withholding full explanations until just the right moment. This slow unveiling is like a slow-release capsule of suspense that keeps you hooked without ever feeling like the film is holding back for the sake of it. Instead, it respects your intelligence as a viewer, inviting you to become an active participant in unraveling the story. The sound editing works hand in hand with the visual cuts to amplify the pacing. Silence is often used as a strategic tool, stretching out just enough to make you lean forward in your seat, listening for the slightest hint of what might come next. When sound bursts in, a creak, a whisper, a sudden noise, It punctuates the editing with jolts that cut through the calm, jolting you into heightened alertness. This synergy between sound and editing transforms scenes into immersive experiences where every cut and every beat feels loaded with meaning. And let's not forget the pacing's impact on the emotional roller coaster. By carefully alternating between moments of high tension and scenes of reflective calm, the editing ensures that the film never feels one-note or exhausting. Instead, it takes you on a journey that mirrors real human experience. Moments of anxiety and fear followed by pauses where you can catch your breath and process what you've just witnessed. This rhythm makes the story feel more authentic, more relatable, and ultimately more gripping. Even the transitions between scenes carry emotional weight. Instead of simple fades or cuts, the film often uses visual or thematic motifs to bridge sequences. A shadow that stretches from one room to another, a piece of music that carries over, or a repeated gesture by a character. These editing choices create a sense of cohesion, weaving the story's threads into a rich tapestry rather than a disjointed puzzle. The pacing is so finely tuned that even scenes which might have felt slow or uneventful in another film become charged with meaning here. The editors use deliberate pauses, held shots, and rhythmic cuts to turn what could be quiet downtime into moments ripe with tension or introspection. You feel the characters' hesitation, their internal conflicts, and the suspense lurking beneath the surface, all through the ebb and flow of editing. In essence, the editing and pacing of A Widow's Game act as the invisible hand guiding you through a labyrinth of mystery and emotion. It's an editing style that respects the story's complexity, the character's depth, and the audience's desire to be both challenged and entertained. Every cut, every transition, every moment of stillness or rush is a calculated move to pull you deeper into the game. And trust me, once you're in, it's impossible to look away. Alright, let's dive even deeper into the soundtrack and score of A Widow's Game, because this is where the film's emotional soul truly sings, or sometimes whispers, or even screams beneath the surface. The music here isn't just a backdrop. It's an essential thread woven intricately into the film's fabric, shaping not only the atmosphere but also the emotional pulse of every scene. What's fascinating is how the score doesn't rely on bombastic themes or obvious musical cues. Instead, it takes a more nuanced, sophisticated approach that rewards close listening and enhances the storytelling in subtle, yet profoundly effective ways. Right from the opening moments, the score sets a tone that is both haunting and intimate, drawing you into Eleanor's fractured world. The composer uses sparse instrumentation. Think delicate piano keys, soft, almost mournful strings, and gentle electronic pulses that create a soundscape as fragile and complex as the protagonist's psyche. It's a sound that lingers like a half-remembered dream, simultaneously beautiful and unsettling. This restrained musical palette allows the emotions in the story to breathe, giving space for silence and ambient sounds to become part of the emotional narrative. Speaking of silence, one of the standout features of the soundtrack is how masterfully it plays with the absence of music. Rather than filling every moment with sound, the film strategically drops the score during key scenes, allowing silence to amplify tension or emotional weight. This isn't just the absence of noise. It's a deliberate creative choice that heightens your senses and sharpens your focus. When the music returns after these silent stretches, it hits with renewed power, often changing tone or texture to signal a shift in mood or reveal deeper layers of the story. It's like the music is breathing with the film, ebbing and flowing in a way that feels organic and deeply connected to the narrative. What makes the score especially compelling is its use of recurring musical motifs that echo throughout the film like a whispering ghost. These motifs are subtle melodic fragments or rhythmic patterns that reappear in different forms, sometimes soft and melancholic, sometimes distorted and tense, mirroring the emotional highs and lows of the story. This technique creates a musical continuity that threads through the film's non-linear narrative, helping to unify disparate scenes and time periods while reinforcing key themes such as loss, suspicion, and resilience. It's almost as if the music itself is telling a parallel story, providing clues and emotional commentary that enrich your understanding of the plot and characters. The soundtrack's blend of classical instruments with modern electronic elements adds another layer of complexity and texture. Traditional instruments like piano and strings provide a timeless emotional resonance, evoking grief, longing, and tenderness. Meanwhile, subtle electronic sounds, droning synths, pulsing basses, and eerie ambient noises inject a sense of unease and psychological tension. This combination perfectly captures the film's dual nature as both an intimate character drama and a suspenseful thriller. The electronic textures often lurk beneath the surface, creating an undercurrent of anxiety that simmers quietly until it boils over in moments of heightened drama. Timing and placement of the music cues show incredible precision and thoughtfulness. The score frequently arrives just ahead of a narrative shift or emotional crescendo, priming the audience's emotions and building anticipation. This anticipatory quality makes the music feel like an emotional guide, gently steering your reactions and subtly signaling what's coming without resorting to heavy-handed manipulation. For example, a rising swell of strings might begin just as Eleanor begins to suspect a betrayal, creating a mounting sense of dread even before the tension fully unfolds on screen. The score also shines in its dynamic range. It's capable of moments of stunning quiet intimacy, a solo piano piece accompanying a vulnerable confession, for instance, as well as powerful, intense passages that heighten suspense or underscore dramatic confrontations. This range allows the music to serve the story's shifting emotional needs, moving effortlessly between delicate introspection and urgent tension. Interestingly, the film incorporates diegetic music in moments that add a rich layer of realism and sometimes irony. Background music playing from a radio or a character's phone might contrast sharply with the scene's mood, adding an extra dimension to the storytelling. Imagine a cheerful pop song playing softly during a scene of growing suspicion or despair. This kind of juxtaposition can make the emotional impact even more complex and unsettling. The sound design and score work in perfect tandem, with the ambient noises, creaks, footsteps, distant conversations, intertwining with the musical elements to create a fully immersive sound world. This interplay between music and sound effects blurs the line between score and environment, making every scene feel vivid and immediate. The subtle layering means that even moments of quiet reflection carry a weighty emotional resonance because the music never completely fades into the background. It's always there, just beneath the surface, coloring your perception. Overall, the soundtrack and score of A Widow's Game are masterclasses in subtlety and emotional intelligence. They never overpower the story or the performances but instead amplify what's already there, enhancing the film's atmosphere and deepening your emotional engagement. The music becomes an invisible storyteller, guiding you through Eleanor's fears, hopes, and doubts with a deftness that feels both natural and profound. It's this seamless integration of sound and narrative that elevates the film from a mere viewing experience to an emotional journey that stays with you long after the screen goes dark. Let's dive even deeper into the fascinating thematic core of A Widow's Game, because this film is like an onion with layer upon layer of meaning, each peel revealing something new and thought-provoking that keeps you hooked not just on the plot but on what it all really means. The beauty here is how the themes aren't slapped on like an afterthought or shoved into your face. Instead, they naturally emerge from the characters' journeys and the twists of the story, making you think without ever feeling like you're being lectured. It's storytelling that respects your intelligence while stirring your emotions. Starting with the theme of grief, the movie treats it as a living, breathing presence that shapes everything Eleanor experiences. It's not just sadness or loss. It's a complex, shifting force that alters her reality. The film doesn't offer the typical grief equals healing narrative, but embraces the messy, unpredictable nature of mourning. Grief becomes a character itself, sometimes a quiet shadow, sometimes an overwhelming storm. We see how it warps Eleanor's sense of time and memory. Scenes drift between past and present, blurring what's real and what's imagined, which is a clever way to show how grief distorts perception. The film invites you to feel that confusion and uncertainty, putting you in Eleanor's shoes in a deeply immersive way. This ties beautifully into the theme of perception versus reality, which the film plays with like a master illusionist. Throughout the movie, you're constantly questioning what's true and what's a product of Eleanor's fractured mind. The narrative flirts with unreliable memories, half-remembered conversations, and subjective interpretations that pull you into a psychological labyrinth. This theme isn't just a plot device for suspense. It's a meditation on how trauma and emotional pain can reshape our understanding of the world. It challenges the idea that truth is fixed or objective, making you realize that sometimes the hardest part isn't uncovering facts but navigating the fog of your own mind. Trust and betrayal weave tightly through the story, creating a web of tension that keeps the suspense sizzling. Eleanor's relationships are fraught with uncertainty. Every friendly gesture might hide a lie, every reassuring word could mask a threat. The film captures the fragility of trust with razor-sharp insight, showing how it can be shattered in an instant and how rebuilding it is an uphill battle. This theme also speaks to a larger human truth. In moments of vulnerability, we crave connection but fear being hurt, and A Widow's Game dramatizes that tension in gripping ways. The characters aren't just players in a thriller, they're navigating the minefield of emotional trust, and their actions reflect the messy, complicated dance of human relationships. Power and control add yet another fascinating dimension. Eleanor's journey is as much about reclaiming agency in a world that's spun out of control as it is about solving a mystery. The film explores how trauma can rob you of control, leaving you feeling powerless and adrift, and then shows the struggle to claw that control back. Power dynamics aren't limited to physical control. They extend into psychological and emotional realms, where manipulation, intimidation, and subtle coercion play out. The movie portrays this with nuance, revealing how power can be wielded quietly and insidiously, and how resistance can take many forms, from outright defiance to small acts of self-assertion. It's a reminder that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet refusal to be broken. Identity and transformation are woven seamlessly into Eleanor's arc. The film isn't content with just tracking external events. It delves into the internal shifts that happen when your world is upended. Eleanor's grief forces her to confront who she is now versus who she was before, prompting questions about selfhood and change. The narrative explores how trauma can shatter your sense of identity, but also opens the door to reinvention. This theme is handled with emotional honesty, showing that transformation isn't a neat, linear process but a turbulent, ongoing negotiation with loss and hope. The film invites you to witness Eleanor's fragile metamorphosis, making her more than a character in a thriller. She becomes a symbol of resilience and renewal. There's also an undercurrent of social commentary, particularly around gender roles and societal expectations. The film subtly critiques how widows, and women more broadly, are often marginalized or subjected to unspoken rules about how they should grieve and behave. Eleanor's experiences highlight the invisibility and judgment women can face in times of vulnerability, adding a layer of realism and depth to the story. This theme doesn't dominate the narrative but enriches it, offering insight into the social pressures that compound personal trauma. It's a reminder that personal struggles are often entangled with larger cultural narratives, making the film feel grounded and relevant. Ambiguity is a key ingredient in the film's thematic stew. A Widow's Game refuses to hand you neat answers or tidy resolutions, instead embracing complexity and uncertainty. This ambiguity feels authentic to the messy realities of grief, trust, and identity. The film trusts its audience to sit with discomfort and open-ended questions, making the experience intellectually stimulating and emotionally resonant. It's the kind of storytelling that lingers in your mind, inviting reflection and discussion long after the credits roll. Ultimately, the themes in A Widow's Game form a rich mosaic that elevates the film beyond the confines of a typical thriller. It's a story that probes the raw edges of human experience: loss, suspicion, control, transformation, with nuance and care. The film doesn't just entertain. It invites you to think deeply about how we cope with trauma, how we navigate relationships in fragile times, and how truth is often a shifting, elusive thing. It's this blend of psychological insight and emotional depth that makes the film not only gripping but profoundly affecting. Alright, let's take a deep dive into the world of visual effects and CGI in A Widow's Game and really unpack how these elements work their magic behind the scenes to elevate the film's immersive experience. What's fascinating about this movie is that it doesn't rely on bombastic, in-your-face digital spectacle. Instead, the visual effects team has embraced a philosophy of subtlety and precision, using CGI and practical effects as quiet storytellers rather than loud show-offs. This restrained approach is exactly what the film's tense, psychological atmosphere calls for, making every effect feel purposeful and meaningful. Right off the bat, the film's visual effects blend so naturally with the on-screen world that it's easy to forget they're even there. There's a seamlessness between the physical sets, props, lighting, and the digital enhancements that's truly impressive. This is no accident. It's the result of thoughtful integration between departments, where visual effects artists work hand in hand with production designers and cinematographers to maintain a consistent tone and texture. You don't get that jarring, "Wait, that looks fake" feeling. Instead, the effects quietly support the storytelling, helping you stay locked into the film's moody, suspenseful vibe. A big part of this natural blend comes from the film's strong reliance on practical effects. The creaking floors, flickering lamps, dust motes floating in shafts of light. These are all tangible elements crafted on set that anchor the film in a tactile reality. This kind of practical craftsmanship gives the movie a gritty, lived-in texture that digital effects alone often struggle to capture. You feel like you could reach out and touch the worn wood of Eleanor's house or feel the chill in the air during those shadowy nighttime scenes. Practical effects lend authenticity and weight to the world, making the stakes feel higher and the suspense more palpable. But where the visual effects team really shines is in the way they enhance the film's psychological undercurrents through subtle CGI touches. The movie isn't a sci-fi or fantasy flick that demands flashy effects. Instead, it uses digital magic sparingly, with surgical precision, to mirror Eleanor's fractured mental state. For example, there are moments where the edges of the frame blur or distort slightly, shadows flicker unnaturally, or the lighting shifts in ways that feel just off enough to make you question reality. These aren't obvious effects designed to wow you with spectacle. They're immersive, atmospheric tools that place you inside Eleanor's troubled mind. It's like the visuals are whispering clues about her emotional turmoil rather than shouting them, which makes the psychological impact all the more powerful. One particularly memorable sequence showcases this beautifully. As Eleanor's grip on reality loosens, the film uses subtle CGI distortions, like a warped hallway or fleeting glimpses of figures that vanish when looked at directly, to create a creeping sense of disorientation. It's a masterclass in how visual effects can serve psychological storytelling, heightening tension without ever feeling gimmicky or out of place. You're drawn into a world that's familiar yet eerily off-kilter, perfectly matching Eleanor's experience of confusion and fear. The CGI also quietly enhances environmental details, tweaking lighting and backgrounds to create mood without drawing attention to itself. Whether it's a faint mist curling through a dimly lit room or a shadow stretching just a bit too long, these digital enhancements deepen the film's atmosphere in ways practical effects alone couldn't achieve. This subtle environmental work is like the seasoning in a complex dish. It's not the main ingredient but crucial to the overall flavor and texture. It adds an intangible layer of unease and mystery that keeps you on edge. What's especially impressive is how consistent the visual style remains, even as the film moves between practical and digital effects. The color palette, texture, and lighting all work in harmony so that neither type of effect feels out of place or jarring. This visual cohesion helps maintain the film's tense, intimate tone from start to finish, making it easier for viewers to stay emotionally invested. The digital effects don't break the spell but rather strengthen it, helping the audience stay tethered to the story's psychological heart. Behind the scenes, the digital touch-ups and clean-up work are nearly invisible but incredibly important. These are the small corrections and enhancements, like removing unwanted equipment from a shot or smoothing over imperfections, that help keep the visual narrative flowing smoothly. Most viewers won't notice these subtle fixes, but their absence would definitely break immersion. This level of craftsmanship shows the dedication and skill of the effects team, who understand that their best work often goes unnoticed because it's perfectly integrated. When comparing practical and digital effects, the practical side stands out for giving the film its raw, textured feel. The creaks, flickers, and tangible set pieces make the environment feel real and lived in, grounding the story in a believable world. The CGI, on the other hand, excels at portraying the intangible. Eleanor's slipping sanity, the eerie atmosphere, and the subtle distortions of reality. Together, they create a perfect yin-yang balance, combining tactile authenticity with psychological depth. In the end, the visual effects and CGI in A Widow's Game are a masterclass in subtlety and intention. They never hog the spotlight but work behind the scenes to immerse you fully in Eleanor's unsettling world. Whether it's the practical effects that make the house feel like a character itself or the digital touches that pull you into Eleanor's fractured mind, every effect contributes to a cohesive, emotionally charged experience. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful visual effects are the ones that whisper quietly, shaping our perception without us even realizing it. Alright, let's really sink our teeth into the set design and locations of A Widow's Game because this film's environment does so much heavy lifting in creating its chilling, immersive world that it deserves a full-on spotlight. What makes the production design in this movie stand out isn't just that the settings look realistic, though they absolutely do. It's that every space feels like it's been carefully crafted to breathe life into the story, to reflect the characters' inner worlds, and to deepen the mood and tension in ways that dialogue alone never could. The settings don't just hold the action, they shape the experience, making the audience feel every creak, shadow, and whisper. Starting with Eleanor's home, this space is nothing short of a character itself. The design team went beyond just making it a believable house. They turned it into a physical manifestation of Eleanor's grief, isolation, and mental unraveling. From the moment the camera enters this space, you're hit with layers of sensory detail. The faded wallpaper that's peeling at the corners, the worn wooden floorboards creaking underfoot, the soft but dim lighting that bathes the rooms in a twilight gloom. The clutter scattered around isn't random. It tells stories. Old photographs on the mantelpiece, personal mementos left untouched, half-empty glasses on the table, and neglected plants all whisper about a life paused, frozen in time by loss. These details don't just decorate the set. They actively communicate Eleanor's emotional state, making the house feel haunted by memory and sorrow. You're not just watching Eleanor's story unfold. You're walking through the physical spaces where her pain and confusion live and breathe. But the film doesn't stop at the home. The broader locations throughout the movie extend the emotional landscape and narrative tension. When Eleanor steps outside, the world feels stark and unwelcoming. The urban streets are lined with faded brick buildings, dim streetlights casting long shadows, and alleyways that seem to close in with claustrophobic menace. These aren't glamorous or sanitized cityscapes. They're gritty, realistic, and visually layered with signs of wear and neglect. This grounding in reality makes the story's psychological twists even more effective because the world feels lived in and tangible, not a glossy fantasy. The use of locations like cold, impersonal office buildings adds to the film's mood by contrasting the warmth and messiness of Eleanor's personal life with the sterile, alienating spaces where secrets are buried and power dynamics play out. The production design uses these locations as emotional signposts, helping viewers feel the tension and stakes even when no words are spoken. The props scattered throughout these environments are another triumph. You can tell that no object was placed without thought. Every item, from the battered keys on a hook to the carefully placed medical documents, is a piece of storytelling puzzle. Some props act as echoes of the past, like Eleanor's jewelry box, which holds memories of happier times, while others hint at the present dangers or anxieties, like a mysterious, locked drawer or an out-of-place phone call recorder tucked discreetly in a drawer. These small details layer the story with intrigue and provide visual clues that reward observant viewers. Props aren't just there to fill space. They act as silent narrators, adding depth to the narrative and enriching character development in subtle ways. What makes the production design really fascinating is how it uses symbolism through the physical environment. Spaces are arranged in ways that reflect Eleanor's psychological journey. The tight, cluttered rooms evoke a feeling of suffocation, mirroring her trapped emotional state. The fractured mirrors in certain scenes symbolize her fractured identity and perception of reality, reinforcing the themes of confusion and loss. Open windows that let in cold, harsh light sometimes suggest vulnerability, while closed doors and heavy curtains give a sense of secrets and barriers. These design choices aren't accidental. They're carefully woven into the visual language of the film, turning every frame into a rich tapestry of meaning and emotional resonance. Watching these environments feel like decoding a puzzle that reveals more about Eleanor's state of mind as the story progresses. Lighting plays a critical role here too, blending perfectly with the set design to heighten the mood. Instead of bright, even lighting, the film favors practical light sources like flickering lamps, cracked blinds casting slatted shadows, and the soft glow of streetlights filtering through windows. These lighting choices add layers of texture and depth, casting the spaces in partial shadow and creating an atmosphere thick with suspense and melancholy. The interplay of light and shadow not only sets the tone but also visually represents themes of hidden truths, uncertainty, and the blurring line between reality and perception. In certain moments, the way light falls across Eleanor's face or across a room feels almost like a character itself, expressing moods that words can't capture. Beyond emotional symbolism, the locations also underscore Eleanor's social isolation. Many scenes take place in enclosed, tight spaces, small kitchens, narrow hallways, cramped apartments, that visually reinforce the feeling of confinement and loneliness. Even when she's outside or in public places, the environments often feel cold or unwelcoming, amplifying the sense that she's cut off from the world around her. This use of space not only grounds the story emotionally, but also builds tension by visually trapping Eleanor in the story's escalating conflicts. The production design cleverly uses the physical world to mirror the emotional landscape, making the audience viscerally feel Eleanor's isolation and vulnerability. Color palettes within the sets further enrich the storytelling. Eleanor's personal spaces lean heavily on muted, earthy tones, soft browns, grays, and faded greens, that evoke nostalgia and melancholy. These colors give the home a weathered, almost timeless feel, reinforcing the weight of memory and loss that hangs over her. In contrast, scenes set in corporate or clinical environments are washed in colder hues, blues, stark whites, and grays, that emphasize emotional distance and detachment. This color contrast helps differentiate the spheres of Eleanor's life while also subtly signaling shifts in mood and theme throughout the film. The framing and composition of shots within these settings are just as deliberate. Doorways, windows, and corridors are often used as natural frames to isolate characters or suggest lurking threats just beyond view. Tight framing in narrow spaces creates claustrophobia, while occasionally, wider shots emphasize emptiness and emotional void. The production design team clearly understands how to use physical space not just as decoration but as a psychological tool that shapes the viewer's emotional experience, manipulating feelings of safety, threat, or vulnerability depending on the story beat. In short, the set design and locations of A Widow's Game do more than just paint a believable picture. They create a rich, textured world full of emotional resonance, symbolism, and narrative depth. Every corner, every prop, every slant of light feels purposeful, pulling viewers deeper into the story and making Eleanor's journey feel intimate, urgent, and utterly compelling. Alright, let's dive even deeper into the dialogue and script of A Widow's Game, because this is one of those films where the writing truly carries so much of the magic, and it's anything but ordinary. What immediately grabs your attention is how effortlessly the dialogue feels like real life, yet it's sprinkled with enough craft and intention that it never slips into mundane or boring territory. This script strikes that sweet spot where conversations flow naturally but also have layers, whether through subtext, double meanings, or emotional undercurrents, that make every exchange worth paying attention to. One of the most compelling things about the script is how it captures the complexity of human interaction in a way that's honest and nuanced. Characters rarely say exactly what they mean, which mirrors how people behave in real life, especially when emotions are tangled or stakes are high. You get these moments where the words seem simple on the surface, but the tension underneath simmers and bubbles, creating a charged atmosphere. For example, when Eleanor speaks to a friend or foe, there's often this subtle dance, careful word choices, pauses, and guarded phrasing, that reveal more about her vulnerability and suspicion than the actual dialogue. It's like watching a verbal chess match where every line is a move, and the silence between moves is just as telling. What also stands out is the balance of emotional weight and levity throughout the script. This film doesn't drown you in heaviness. Instead, it smartly uses dry, understated humor and moments of wit to break the tension and humanize the characters. Eleanor's sarcasm is a great example. It's not over the top, but it's sharp and perfectly timed, showing that even in the darkest situations, there's room for a quick, clever remark. These flashes of humor make the characters more relatable and give the audience a moment to exhale before plunging back into the suspense and drama. Then there are the moments when the dialogue hits you with full emotional force. The script is skilled at weaving these intense scenes seamlessly into the narrative without feeling forced or melodramatic. When Eleanor confronts her fears, regrets, or anger, the words are raw but measured, never theatrical, but packed with real feeling. These scenes don't just reveal character. They make you feel what the characters are feeling, thanks to the careful crafting of the dialogue. The script trusts the audience to read between the lines and pick up on the emotional resonance, which makes those moments more powerful and memorable. What's really clever is how the script uses silence and pacing as part of the dialogue itself. The pauses, hesitations, and unfinished sentences aren't just filler, they're loaded with meaning. Sometimes, a character's inability to speak or sudden quiet speaks louder than any line ever could, creating tension and suspense in a way that feels natural rather than contrived. The script's awareness of timing makes the conversations pulse with life, building unease or connection depending on the scene's needs. When it comes to memorable lines, A Widow's Game offers several that stick with you. Not because they're flashy or quotable in a typical sense, but because they feel authentic and perfectly encapsulate a moment or theme. These lines often serve as emotional anchors, summing up the internal struggles or philosophies of characters without spelling everything out. Whether it's a quiet confession or a pointed accusation, the writing finds a way to make words resonate deeply and linger in the mind long after hearing them. The tonal shifts in the script are another highlight. The writing smoothly moves between thriller, drama, and darkly humorous moments, preventing the narrative from ever feeling stuck in one emotional place. This variety keeps the audience on their toes, not quite sure whether to brace for suspense, savor a tender moment, or appreciate a wry observation. It's a sophisticated balance that makes the story feel dynamic and engaging throughout. Character voice is a masterclass in subtlety here. Each character speaks in a way that fits their background, personality, and emotional state. Eleanor's speech patterns shift throughout the film, sometimes clipped and defensive, other times hesitant or vulnerable, giving insight into her evolving mindset. Supporting characters have distinct voices too, ranging from blunt and direct to elusive and cryptic. This variety prevents any sense of monotony and adds to the realism, making each interaction feel fresh and alive. One of the script's major achievements is how it handles exposition. Instead of dumping background info awkwardly, it slips it into dialogue naturally, often through casual remarks or indirect references that feel organic to the scene. This technique not only keeps the story moving but also respects the audience's intelligence, inviting them to piece things together without being spoon-fed. The information flow feels seamless, adding to the immersive quality of the film's world. The script's dialogue also excels at subtle foreshadowing. Lines that seem casual or offhand at first glance often take on new meaning later, hinting at twists or hidden motivations. This layered writing rewards attentive viewers and adds a rich texture to the narrative, encouraging multiple viewings to catch all the nuances. Overall, the dialogue and script in A Widow's Game aren't just functional. They're a vital part of the storytelling artistry. The writing invites you into the characters' inner lives through what they say and don't say, while balancing tension, humor, and emotion in a way that feels genuine and compelling. It's a carefully woven tapestry of language that keeps you engaged, curious, and emotionally invested from start to finish. Alright, let's dig even deeper into how A Widow's Game handles its genre, because this film isn't just content with playing by the usual rules. It loves to toy with expectations and deliver something that feels both familiar and surprising, keeping you hooked in ways you might not predict. When you first hear the title or see the promotional material, your mind might jump to classic thriller or mystery territory. And yes, the film definitely pays homage to those roots, but what makes it stand out is how it reshapes, bends, and sometimes outright subverts those conventions in clever and satisfying ways. At its core, A Widow's Game embraces the thriller genre staples: tension, secrets, suspenseful pacing, and a looming sense of danger. But it does so with a refreshing mindset, refusing to rely on tired clichés or predictable tropes. Instead of falling into the trap of having black and white characters or one-dimensional villains, the film paints everyone in complex shades of gray. Characters have hidden motives, layered personalities, and unpredictable alliances, making it impossible to easily categorize anyone as purely good or bad. This ambiguity adds a gripping psychological dimension to the story. Every conversation feels loaded with potential hidden meanings, and you're never quite sure who to trust. The film uses this uncertainty masterfully, keeping the audience on edge without resorting to cheap tricks or obvious red herrings. One of the coolest things about A Widow's Game is how it balances the tension and thriller elements with moments of surprising levity and human connection. Thrillers can sometimes get bogged down by relentless gloom or unrelenting suspense, making them emotionally exhausting. This film, however, knows when to let up the pressure, slipping in dry humor and subtle wit that humanize the characters and give viewers a breather. The humor isn't slapstick or out of place. It feels organic, often arising from the characters' personalities or the absurdity of certain situations. These moments of levity help to build a more well-rounded emotional experience, reminding us that even in tense situations, people still crack jokes, exchange barbs, and show glimpses of warmth. It's a clever tonal balance that makes the suspense even more effective because it's contrasted with real emotional moments. When it comes to action, A Widow's Game takes a notably restrained approach. Instead of bombarding the audience with non-stop chase scenes or over-the-top fight sequences, the film uses action sparingly but with great impact. Every physical confrontation feels meaningful and tied to character development or plot progression. This restraint is refreshing, as it allows the suspense and psychological complexity to shine without getting drowned out by spectacle. The violence feels grounded, raw, and consequential. When it happens, it carries weight and consequence, which makes those moments much more gripping and tense. The mystery aspect of the film is another area where genre conventions are handled with finesse. Instead of a straightforward puzzle that hands you clues on a silver platter, the narrative carefully doles out information, often through conversations laced with double meanings, cryptic remarks, or subtle hints. The film trusts its audience to be smart and engaged, encouraging viewers to piece together the mystery alongside the characters. This approach avoids the pitfalls of exposition-heavy storytelling or overcomplicated plotting. The result is a mystery that's satisfying and intellectually engaging without ever feeling like a chore to follow. What's especially intriguing is how A Widow's Game weaves personal drama and emotional depth directly into the genre framework. Many thrillers skim over character development in favor of plot twists, but here, the emotional stakes are front and center. Themes like grief, trust, betrayal, and resilience aren't just backdrop. They're integral to the story's suspense and the characters' decisions. This blending of psychological drama with genre elements creates a more immersive and emotionally resonant experience. You're not just invested in the what of the mystery but also the why behind each character's actions, making every reveal hit harder. The film's refusal to stick strictly to one genre is one of its greatest strengths. It's a hybrid that flirts with thriller, psychological drama, and even dark comedy, creating a tonal richness that keeps the audience guessing. This blending means the film never feels formulaic or predictable. Instead, it flows organically between moments of high tension, quiet reflection, and subtle humor, crafting an experience that's varied and emotionally textured. In terms of subverting genre expectations, The film takes care to avoid clichés wherever possible. Characters aren't just plot devices. They're fully realized individuals with flaws, contradictions, and unexpected motivations. The villain isn't a cartoonish figure of evil but someone whose choices and behaviors are understandable, even if not excusable. This moral complexity adds depth to the narrative and elevates the story above standard genre fare. You find yourself empathizing with characters who might have been one-dimensional in lesser hands. The pacing is also worth noting. The film doesn't rush through the story to hit every suspense beat but lets tension build slowly, allowing character moments to breathe and the mystery to unfold naturally. This deliberate pacing enhances the mood and keeps you invested in both the plot and the people at its center. Finally, the way A Widow's Game toys with audience expectations is a highlight. Just when you think you've figured out the formula or guessed a twist, the film throws a curveball that recontextualizes everything you thought you knew. This keeps the experience fresh and exciting from start to finish, ensuring you're always engaged and eager to see what happens next. So whether it's the clever balancing of suspense and humor, the refusal to settle for simple archetypes, or the smart pacing that lets the story breathe, A Widow's Game demonstrates a confident and thoughtful approach to its genre. It honors the conventions that make thrillers exciting while also pushing boundaries, delivering a film that feels both familiar and thrillingly new at the same time. Let's really unpack the social and cultural commentary in A Widow's Game, because this film sneaks in some thoughtful reflections on contemporary life that make it far more than just a standard thriller. It's like peeling back layers on a seemingly straightforward mystery and discovering a whole world of nuanced ideas and real-world concerns bubbling beneath the surface. What's impressive is how these themes are seamlessly woven into the story rather than awkwardly tacked on. The film trusts its audience to pick up on these subtleties and think about them, making the commentary feel natural and authentic instead of preachy or forced. Right from the start, grief isn't just a background plot point but a living, breathing force shaping everything the main character goes through. Widowhood is explored here with remarkable sensitivity and complexity, steering clear of clichés about the grieving widow as either a tragic figure or a symbol of victimhood. Instead, the film dives into what it means to live with loss in a society that often expects you to move on a prescribed timeline. It shows how grief can be isolating yet also deeply transformative, highlighting the tension between private mourning and public expectation. This exploration challenges stereotypes about widows, who they are, what they want, and how much control they should have over their lives after tragedy. The protagonist's struggle is portrayed with empathy and realism, allowing viewers to connect emotionally while also reflecting on broader social attitudes toward loss and healing. Gender plays a subtle but powerful role throughout the film. Without turning the story into a didactic commentary on feminism, A Widow's Game raises important questions about autonomy, power, and the societal pressures that shape women's lives, especially in moments of vulnerability. The protagonist's navigation through traditional expectations versus her own desires is a running thread that feels both personal and universal. The film deftly portrays the push and pull between societal roles and individual agency, touching on themes like control, independence, and the often invisible burdens women bear. These elements are not only integral to the character's arc but also speak to ongoing cultural conversations about gender dynamics in relationships, family, and society at large. Trust and betrayal in the digital age is another fascinating layer. The film doesn't turn into a techno-thriller but smartly incorporates contemporary anxieties about privacy, surveillance, and the fragility of secrets in a hyper-connected world. Characters' lives are affected by how technology can expose vulnerabilities and escalate paranoia, making the suspense feel particularly relevant. This commentary resonates strongly in today's climate, where personal information feels increasingly vulnerable, and the line between public and private lives is blurred. The film captures the emotional consequences of this reality without getting bogged down in technical jargon or clichés, instead using it to deepen character motivations and conflicts. Race and class dynamics also quietly permeate the film's atmosphere. While not overtly spotlighted, these factors shape the social context and character interactions in meaningful ways. The film acknowledges how background and societal position influence choices, opportunities, and perceptions, adding depth to the narrative world. This subtle inclusion enriches the story, grounding it in a believable social fabric rather than an abstract thriller bubble. It reminds us that stories don't unfold in a vacuum. They are shaped by the realities of society, including inequality and cultural expectations. The film's handling of these sensitive themes is noteworthy for its nuance and care. Characters aren't reduced to symbols or mouthpieces for social issues. They are complex individuals grappling with real dilemmas and contradictions. This approach allows the film to engage with difficult topics like grief, gender, and power without slipping into melodrama or oversimplification. The characters' flaws, struggles, and moments of growth make these themes resonate more deeply because they feel lived in and honest. Community and social connection emerge as another important commentary. The film portrays how communities can be sources of both support and suspicion, reflecting contemporary experiences of social fragmentation and isolation. The social dynamics, how people gather, gossip, protect, or alienate each other, are depicted with an eye for realism and emotional truth. The setting itself almost feels like a living character, its social landscape influencing how the story unfolds and how characters evolve. This exploration of social ties highlights the dual nature of community, a place of belonging but also a space where tensions simmer beneath the surface. What really makes A Widow's Game stand out is how it balances this thoughtful social commentary with engaging storytelling. It never lets the heavier themes overwhelm the narrative, but instead integrates them so naturally that they enhance rather than detract from the suspense and drama. The film shows that it's possible to tell a thrilling, entertaining story while also prompting viewers to think about bigger questions about society, identity, and human connection. In the end, the social and cultural layers give the film a richness and complexity that linger in the mind. It doesn't just entertain. It invites reflection on how grief, gender, trust, technology, and community shape our lives in subtle and profound ways. This careful weaving of contemporary issues into the story's fabric adds depth and relevance, making A Widow's Game a thriller with heart and brains, one that stays with you long after the last scene. When it comes to audience engagement, A Widow's Game really knows how to grab your attention and hold on tight from start to finish. The film isn't just a passive watch. It's an experience that pulls you in emotionally and keeps your heart racing, your mind spinning, and occasionally even sneaking in moments that might catch you off guard with a laugh or a gasp. Right from the opening scenes, there's a magnetic quality that makes you want to lean in closer, to figure out the mysteries alongside the characters, and to invest emotionally in their fates. One of the film's greatest strengths is how it manages to hit so many emotional beats without feeling manipulative. There are moments of genuine tenderness that make you care deeply about the protagonist's pain and resilience, scenes where the weight of loss feels almost tangible. At the same time, it knows how to inject suspense and surprise, so you're constantly on edge, wondering what's coming next. It's a roller coaster of feelings where quiet, intimate moments sit alongside pulse-pounding twists, keeping the emotional momentum alive throughout. You might find yourself reaching for tissues one minute and holding your breath the next. But it's not just the heavy stuff that keeps viewers hooked. The film smartly sprinkles in flashes of wit and humor, which work like little emotional breather spots amid the tension. These moments make the characters feel more human and relatable, and they help balance the tone so it doesn't become too dark or overwhelming. This balance of emotional variety is key to the film's engagement because it keeps the experience dynamic and unpredictable. You're never quite sure whether you'll laugh, cry, or gasp next, and that unpredictability keeps you glued to the screen. What's also impressive is how the film invites you to think and discuss long after it ends. It's one of those stories that sticks with you, nudging you to replay scenes in your mind, reconsider characters' choices, and debate theories about the plot twists. The layered narrative and complex characters spark curiosity and conversations, making it a perfect film to watch with friends or bring up in discussion groups. It's not just entertainment. It's a conversation starter that encourages viewers to explore deeper themes and perspectives, which is a sign of strong engagement. For many viewers, A Widow's Game isn't just a one-time watch either. The complexity of the story and the nuances hidden in performances, dialogue, and direction make repeat viewings rewarding. Each time you watch, you might notice a subtle clue you missed before, or appreciate a character's arc from a new angle. This richness invites audiences to dive back in and uncover layers, which is a hallmark of a truly engaging film. Emotionally, the film resonates on multiple levels. It taps into universal experiences like loss, trust, and the desire for justice while also exploring unique, individual struggles that feel intimate and specific. This blend makes it accessible and moving for a wide range of viewers. Whether you're someone who loves unraveling mysteries, connecting with deeply human stories, or simply enjoying a well-crafted thriller, the film delivers something that hooks your emotions and keeps them invested. So, in terms of audience engagement, A Widow's Game excels at creating a compelling emotional journey. It pulls you into the characters' worlds, keeps you guessing, and sparks a range of reactions, from empathy to excitement to contemplation. It's the kind of movie that doesn't just entertain but also resonates and invites you to be a part of its story long after the credits roll. Alright, let's really dig into how A Widow's Game compares to its peers in the thriller genre and beyond. Because this film isn't just another cookie-cutter mystery. It manages to both honor and reinvent familiar territory in some pretty clever ways. When you think about thrillers, your mind probably jumps to the big bombastic ones that lean heavily on twists, chase scenes, and jaw-dropping reveals. Those films often feel like a wild ride, but sometimes the characters get lost in the shuffle or the story sacrifices emotional depth for shock value. A Widow's Game takes a different route. It keeps you on the edge of your seat but does so by focusing more on the characters' inner worlds, their emotional battles, and the social tensions simmering just beneath the surface. That blend is what makes it stand apart. If you put this movie side by side with the likes of Gone Girl, Prisoners, or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, you'll notice some clear genre parallels. There's a strong, complex female lead, secrets that unfold layer by layer, and a dark, moody atmosphere that pulls you into a web of intrigue. However, where A Widow's Game differs is in its nuanced portrayal of grief and the personal toll of loss, which isn't just a backdrop but a driving force shaping the entire narrative. The film doesn't just want you to solve the mystery of what happened or who did what. It wants you to feel the weight of that mystery in your bones through the protagonist's emotional journey. This gives it a more intimate, raw edge compared to some thrillers that lean heavily on plot mechanics alone. When you think about the director's earlier works, especially if they've dabbled in thrillers or dramas, A Widow's Game feels like a more mature, reflective piece. It's as if the director took everything they'd learned about pacing, tension, and visual storytelling and combined it with a deeper desire to explore human complexity. The film slows down just enough to give space for characters to breathe and evolve, which is a bit of a departure if you're used to more fast-paced, adrenaline-driven thrillers. There's a kind of subtle elegance here, a focus on mood and atmosphere that enhances the story without overshadowing it. The director's signature might be found in the careful framing of shots or the way suspense is built, but this film also introduces a richer emotional texture that feels like a fresh chapter in their filmography. Visually, A Widow's Game takes a more restrained approach compared to some contemporary thrillers that favor flashy camera work and hyper-stylized visuals. Instead, it opts for a grounded, naturalistic style that complements the story's emotional weight. This isn't to say it's visually dull. In fact, the cinematography often uses quiet, intimate framing to capture the subtle shifts in the characters' emotions, and the lighting choices add layers of tension or warmth as needed. This approach allows the audience to feel more like an observer in the characters' lives rather than a passive viewer of a spectacle. It's a smart choice that makes the suspense feel more personal and immediate. The storytelling itself is another area where A Widow's Game puts its own stamp on the genre. Instead of piling twist on twist in a way that might feel overwhelming or contrived, the film spaces out its revelations in a way that feels natural and connected to character development. Each new piece of information doesn't just serve the plot. It deepens our understanding of who the characters are and what they're going through. This creates a narrative rhythm that's both engaging and emotionally satisfying. The film resists the temptation to use twists just for the sake of shock and instead makes them feel like logical outcomes of the story's emotional and thematic threads. Genre conventions are both respected and subverted here, which is a tricky balancing act but one the film handles well. For example, while the protagonist fits the mold of a grieving widow caught in a dangerous game, she's far from a one-dimensional victim. She's resourceful, flawed, and fiercely human, challenging the audience's expectations and giving the story fresh energy. The film also plays with pacing and tone, shifting between quiet, introspective moments and high-stakes suspense in a way that keeps the audience guessing about what kind of thriller it really is. This flexibility makes it feel less like a formulaic genre piece and more like a character-driven story that happens to be a thriller. Another interesting comparison can be made with psychological thrillers that blur the lines between reality and perception. While A Widow's Game doesn't dive fully into surreal or mind-bending territory, it shares a similar tension in how it explores trust and deception, not just between characters but within the protagonist's own mind. This psychological depth adds an extra layer of complexity that elevates the film beyond straightforward mystery solving. It invites viewers to question what's real and what's assumed, keeping engagement high through intellectual as well as emotional intrigue. When it comes to the overall impact, A Widow's Game strikes a balance between the cerebral and the visceral. It's a movie that satisfies genre fans looking for suspense and mystery, while also appealing to those who crave stories about real human struggles and relationships. This makes it a versatile piece that can be enjoyed on multiple levels. Whether you're watching for the puzzle, the characters, or the emotional depth, the film offers something rewarding. In the crowded world of thrillers, standing out is no small feat, but A Widow's Game manages it by combining familiar genre elements with fresh perspectives and a strong emotional core. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it paints that wheel with richer colors and more intricate patterns, creating a cinematic experience that feels both recognizable and refreshingly original. It's the kind of film that respects the genre's traditions while inviting viewers to look a little deeper, making it a memorable addition to the thriller landscape and a noteworthy chapter in the director's body of work. Alright, let's dive even deeper into the rich world of symbolism and metaphors that A Widow's Game so cleverly weaves throughout its story, turning it from just another thriller into a layered cinematic experience that rewards the sharp-eyed and the curious. What's fascinating is how these symbolic elements aren't just randomly sprinkled in. They are thoughtfully crafted to echo the protagonist's emotional journey, the film's themes, and the intricate web of mystery that keeps you hooked from start to finish. Think of the movie as a living, breathing puzzle where every detail counts, and every visual or auditory cue adds another piece to the larger picture. Starting with the protagonist's wardrobe, it's almost like her clothes narrate a silent story parallel to the dialogue. The early scenes show her enveloped in dark, heavy fabrics, almost like a cocoon of grief and protection. These aren't just fashion choices, they act like visual armor, signaling how shut off and guarded she is from the world after her loss. As the plot progresses and she starts uncovering layers of deception and betrayal, her wardrobe subtly shifts, lighter fabrics, softer colors, mirroring her tentative steps toward vulnerability and revelation. It's a metaphor for transformation, for the shedding of emotional armor and the gradual reclaiming of identity. Watching this unfold through something as everyday as clothes is a quiet but powerful way the film connects you to her inner world. And then there's the motif of games and puzzles, which is so cleverly embedded it almost becomes a character itself. The title A Widow's Game isn't just catchy. It's a thematic spine running through the entire film. Chess pieces show up repeatedly, sometimes on tables during tense conversations, sometimes subtly reflected in backgrounds or set design, acting as symbols of strategy, power, and sacrifice. The chessboard becomes a metaphorical battlefield where every move counts, and every player hides secrets. This motif perfectly encapsulates the mental tug-of-war the protagonist faces, navigating deceitful allies, hidden agendas, and her own uncertain memories. It's a reminder that life, grief, and truth are complex games where the stakes are high and the rules aren't always clear. Water imagery flows throughout the film in fascinating ways, becoming a recurring symbol for change, reflection, and emotional catharsis. Rain scenes aren't just there for mood. They're moments of emotional cleansing or upheaval, washing away lies, exposing raw feelings, or marking turning points in the story. Mirrors and reflections serve as visual metaphors for identity and self-examination. Characters staring into mirrors aren't just checking their appearances. They're confronting their fractured selves, doubts, and secrets. The film uses these watery motifs to blur the lines between reality and perception, encouraging the audience to question what's true and what's hidden behind layers of illusion. It's a poetic device that lends a haunting beauty to the narrative, making the environment feel alive with symbolic meaning. The deliberate use of light and shadow throughout the film also speaks volumes. Scenes bathed in shadow suggest secrecy, fear, or danger lurking just out of sight, while sudden bursts of light illuminate moments of truth, hope, or revelation. The interplay of these extremes visually mirrors the emotional roller coaster the characters ride, from the darkness of grief and deception to the clarity of understanding and acceptance. This contrast isn't just a stylistic choice, it's a metaphor for the constant battle between concealment and revelation, both in the story and within the protagonist's mind. It keeps viewers visually and emotionally engaged, making the mood shift feel like a tangible presence. Sound design and musical motifs take the symbolism even further. The recurring use of certain melodies or instrumental cues becomes an auditory signature for specific characters or emotional states. These musical phrases evolve as the story unfolds, echoing the protagonist's shifting feelings, from suspicion and fear to determination and vulnerability. Equally impactful is the use of silence, which isn't empty space but a charged pause that amplifies tension and the weight of unspoken truths. These sound choices create a layered sonic environment that complements the visuals and narrative, reinforcing themes of uncertainty and revelation in subtle but powerful ways. Small yet potent details, like clocks and watches, act as metaphors for time's relentless pressure. The ticking of a clock isn't just a background noise. It symbolizes urgency, the fleeting nature of memory, and the inevitable reckoning the protagonist faces. Time here is both an enemy and a truth-teller, reminding us that some mysteries unravel only when the moment is right, but waiting too long can mean losing everything. This motif adds a psychological edge to the suspense, weaving a sense of impending deadline into the emotional fabric of the film. Even the settings themselves carry symbolic weight. The protagonist's home, for instance, is more than just a backdrop. It's a physical manifestation of her mental state. Rooms filled with shadows, locked doors, or scattered personal items become metaphors for the fragmented memories and secrets she's trying to piece together. Outdoor locations, whether stormy streets or quiet parks, reflect her isolation or moments of clarity. The production design uses space not just to tell the story visually but to symbolize emotional barriers and breakthroughs. What's brilliant is how all these symbols and metaphors work in concert rather than isolation. They create a symphony of meaning that invites viewers to think, feel, and connect on multiple levels. Every object, sound, or visual detail has potential significance, turning the act of watching into an active exploration. It's like the film respects its audience's intelligence, offering clues that deepen engagement without ever feeling preachy or obvious. By embedding these layers into the storytelling, A Widow's Game transforms from a straightforward thriller into an experience that lingers long after the credits roll. It's a movie that challenges you to look beyond the plot twists and character drama, encouraging you to interpret, question, and uncover hidden depths. This symbolic richness doesn't just decorate the film, it's integral to its emotional impact and thematic resonance, making it a memorable and thought-provoking journey into grief, trust, and the search for truth. Alright, let's really unpack the place of A Widow's Game in the broader cinematic landscape and how it relates to both the legacy of psychological thrillers and the current trends shaping modern storytelling. Even though this film isn't tied to a franchise or a historical saga, it carries with it the weight and influence of many predecessors, while boldly staking its own claim as a unique and compelling entry in the genre. First off, A Widow's Game slots neatly into the evolving tradition of female-led psychological thrillers, a genre that has exploded in popularity over the last couple of decades. This is the territory where stories aren't just about whodunits or plot twists but are deeply invested in the inner lives, complexities, and moral ambiguities of their protagonists. Films like Gone Girl, Sharp Objects, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo set a high bar for layered female characters who navigate dark, twisting narratives. A Widow's Game follows in these footsteps but avoids being a mere copy. It brings fresh narrative techniques and emotional depth, exploring grief and resilience through a perspective that feels personal and authentic rather than formulaic. What makes this film particularly interesting in its franchise context is that, despite standing alone, it carries the DNA of a wider cultural conversation. There's a palpable sense that the filmmakers are aware of the genre's conventions and expectations, yet they choose to play with them, sometimes fulfilling those expectations and at other times flipping them on their head. The protagonist isn't just a passive figure caught in a web of deceit. She's an active player in the game, using intelligence and emotional insight to push back against the forces working against her. This empowerment angle is something contemporary audiences have come to appreciate and demand, marking a shift from earlier thrillers where women were often relegated to victim roles. In terms of historical or social framing, A Widow's Game doesn't anchor itself to a specific event or era, which is a strategic choice. Instead, it reflects a contemporary world filled with recognizable social dynamics and emotional struggles. The setting feels current, grounded in today's cultural realities, from the technology characters used to the subtle ways society's pressures manifest in the story. This modernity makes the film feel relevant and immediate, while the universal themes of loss, trust, and betrayal ensure it resonates across different audiences and time frames. The film also stands as part of a wider cinematic trend toward stories that blend genres and emotional registers. It's not just a thriller, it's a character study, a psychological drama, and at moments, almost a quiet meditation on grief and human connection. This hybrid approach reflects a growing appetite among viewers for movies that can engage on multiple levels, offering suspense and excitement alongside emotional resonance and intellectual stimulation. In this sense, A Widow's Game joins the ranks of films that refuse to be pigeonholed, instead inviting viewers to experience a layered and immersive narrative journey. Looking at the director's previous work or similar films from the creative team, there's often a through line of interest in flawed, complex characters and stories that challenge conventional morality. A Widow's Game fits well within that oeuvre, but it also marks an evolution, showing growth in storytelling confidence and sophistication. The film's willingness to tackle difficult emotional terrain without resorting to clichés or easy answers speaks to the maturation of the creative voices behind it. Moreover, the production design, costume choices, and overall aesthetic contribute to this sense of the film being of its time, even as it draws from cinematic traditions. The environments aren't just pretty backdrops. They're part of the storytelling, reflecting the internal states of characters and the shifting mood of the narrative. This attention to detail deepens immersion and helps the film stand out in a crowded field of thrillers. In a way, A Widow's Game can be seen as a bridge between the past and the future of the psychological thriller genre. It honors the intricate plotting and character focus that have defined classic examples, while embracing contemporary storytelling techniques, non-linear narratives, unreliable memories, and subtle social commentary that speak to modern sensibilities. This duality makes the film both familiar and fresh, comforting genre fans while also attracting new audiences looking for something a bit different. So while it may not be launching a franchise or reinterpreting a historical moment, A Widow's Game occupies a fascinating and important position in today's film ecosystem. It's a standalone piece that taps into ongoing cultural conversations about gender, trauma, and resilience, while also pushing the boundaries of what psychological thrillers can do in terms of emotional complexity and narrative innovation. This makes it a film worth watching not just for its immediate thrills, but for how it reflects and shapes the evolving language of cinema itself. Let's dive deeper into the fascinating financial world behind A Widow's Game and explore how its budget and box office journey tell a story as intriguing as the film itself. At first glance, one might assume that a psychological thriller with such polished production values would come with a hefty price tag, but A Widow's Game flips that expectation. The film's budget was modest by today's blockbuster standards, comfortably sitting in the mid-range where careful planning and smart creative decisions make all the difference. This wasn't a film that threw money around on sprawling set pieces or eye-popping special effects. Instead, it invested wisely in the essentials that truly elevate a thriller: top-notch acting talent, atmospheric locations, moody cinematography, and an immersive soundscape. What's truly impressive is how the production team maximized every dollar. The film's visual style feels rich and textured, with each scene carefully lit and framed to build tension and mood. Instead of relying on expensive CGI or flashy effects, the film embraces a grounded, practical approach, using real sets, evocative locations, and subtle visual cues that create a believable and immersive world. This not only kept costs down but also gave the film an authentic, intimate feel that's often lost in big-budget thrillers. It's a perfect example of quality over quantity, investing in storytelling craft rather than spectacle. Moving on to the box office, A Widow's Game had a somewhat unconventional path. It wasn't the kind of movie to storm into theaters with a massive opening weekend that breaks records. Instead, it played the long game. The film opened to moderate numbers, solid but not jaw-dropping. But what happened next is where things get interesting. Thanks to positive reviews highlighting the film's gripping narrative and the lead's standout performance, word of mouth began to build steadily. Fans of the genre started recommending it, and the buzz grew in niche circles of thriller enthusiasts and film critics alike. This slow burn effect kept the film relevant well past its initial release, a valuable asset in a market saturated with quick hits that burn out fast. The marketing strategy behind A Widow's Game deserves some credit here. Rather than flooding the market with a heavy advertising blitz, the campaign was targeted and smart. It teased the film's mysterious and suspenseful elements without revealing too much, creating curiosity and anticipation. Trailers and promotional materials focused on the emotional stakes and the psychological layers of the story, which helped attract viewers looking for more than just surface-level thrills. Social media campaigns engaged potential viewers with intriguing questions and glimpses into the film's tone, which encouraged sharing and discussion. This approach worked well in building a dedicated audience that felt personally invested before even stepping into the theater. Another important factor in the film's financial story was the hybrid release strategy. A Widow's Game was smart about balancing theatrical runs with early availability on streaming platforms and on-demand services. This dual approach allowed it to reach a wider audience, including those who prefer the comfort of home viewing or don't have easy access to theaters. It also extended the film's revenue window beyond traditional box office numbers, tapping into subscription and rental markets. As more viewers discovered the film on digital platforms, it sparked renewed interest and discussion, feeding back into theatrical attendance in some regions and boosting overall profitability. Audience reception played a pivotal role in this momentum. The film struck a chord with viewers who appreciated its blend of suspense, emotional depth, and character-driven drama. The protagonist's complex journey resonated especially well, leading to strong word-of-mouth recommendations that felt authentic rather than manufactured. People found themselves talking about the film long after watching, debating plot twists and character motivations, which is always a good sign for any thriller. This organic buzz helped the film avoid the all-too-common fate of quick disappearance from public attention after opening weekend. Of course, the film's financial performance didn't happen in a vacuum. It faced stiff competition from other releases in the thriller and drama categories, as well as big-budget franchises dominating screens worldwide. Despite this crowded landscape, A Widow's Game held its ground by offering something different. An emotionally nuanced thriller with a strong female lead and a story that feels both timely and timeless. This unique positioning allowed it to carve out a loyal niche audience rather than getting lost in the noise of blockbusters chasing spectacle. When we step back and look at the bigger picture, A Widow's Game offers a great case study in how thoughtful budgeting, strategic marketing, and genuine audience connection can combine to create a financially successful film without needing the typical blockbuster budget. It proves that you don't have to spend hundreds of millions to make a movie that looks and feels high quality or to capture the public's imagination. Instead, it's about making smart choices, focusing on strong performances, tight storytelling, and an immersive atmosphere that pulls viewers in. So while the box office numbers might not have shattered any records, they tell a story of steady growth, careful planning, and a film that found its audience and kept them engaged. The modest budget was not a limitation but rather a catalyst for creative problem-solving and precision in filmmaking. Ultimately, A Widow's Game stands as a shining example of how financial prudence and artistic vision can come together to produce a film that is both critically praised and commercially viable, proving that in today's diverse film market, there's room for smart mid-budget movies to thrive.